So this is what we're making, a scroll work ring with a pearl set in a cup, freshwater pearl this time. I'm going to make a scroll work ring, and I'm going to use the idea in 3 different incarnations. I'm going to put one, I'm just going to have a plain scroll work ring. The second one I'm going to have a pearl sitting in the middle, and the third one I'm going to have a claw setting. But it's a good basic setup. Now, I know that the ring shank I'm making needs to be 61 millimeters long. So draw full size your piece, and I'm just going to put a reference line down the middle. I'm going to use 1.2 millimeter round wire. I'll zoom in so you can see my layout. So 1.2 is the wire. And if you're using that size, what you do is you get the diameter of your ring, add that, multiply by 3.14, and it'll give you your length. Now, what I'm doing is I'm going to have an 8 millimeter wide piece in the middle. So that's the middle. And just lay it out, and lay it out full size. So I'm going to go 5 millimeters just to make it a little more user-friendly. Now what I'm going to do is taper from here down to the end. So leave about 1 millimeter on the side. So basically we're working within a diamond shape, and what I want is I'm going to pretty much lay this out so that I can do my wire work and lay it on this prototype drawing. So I know that I'm going to, for this one, I'm going to do a 6 millimeter pearl, so I know that I have a 6 millimeter circle here in the middle. And then I'm just going to do a couple of scrolls, and fairly large on this end, tapering down to small on this end. So what I'll do is I'll just like that, and then the opposite on the other side, so that my pearl cup will be soldered at this point, and the scroll work will be soldered here, 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 and here. So it'll be a pretty good structure. Now what I'll do first is I'll make the whole ring without the pearl cup, because hammering is, we can make it flat, and then we'll hammer it around a ring mandrel and solder the ends. Well, hammering it around a ring mandrel, if we have our pearl cup on there, we'll flatten it out. So we'll wait until it's formed. It'll all be made completely formed, and then we'll solder our pearl cup in. Okay? So here's my 1.2 wire, and I clipped it about 2 millimeters longer than I need, because what I'm going to do first is solder these 2 ends, hard solder. Then I'll make the scroll work to fit, and because we're pushing it around with the wire in here, it'll be held stable because it's already soldered on the ends. So file the inside of these 2 spots just touch it with your flat hand file. And this curve is the curve of the coil of the wire. I didn't bend it that way. But you can so basically that's all you need. Just so that you have a little flat spot where the two wires touch, because you'll have a better solder join. So stir up your flux. If it's dry, use distilled water. And just a spot of flux on either end. Two small pieces of hard solder. So you place your solder with your flux brush, and we're just heating the two ends at the same time. And when the solder flows, it should flow to both of them. Now just use my solder pick to push that into place. Same thing on this end, you can see the solder flow. Now I'm going to level this out. Now we're ready, and I may as well anneal the rest of this while I'm at it. Shift it with your solder pick so it doesn't stick to your block, and pickle it, quench it and pickle it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my copper wire and practice making my scroll work. So the total length is 20, so I'll guess about 35 for this. We don't have to do any filing or anything on this because this is just to see what works. So small scroll on that end, and then a bigger scroll on this end. And we'll just lay that in there, because this has to be wide enough to touch both sides here, and it has to be wide enough to touch both sides there. So this is obviously a little bit short. So we go 40 millimeters. And you can see why I'm using the copper, because if we did that with silver, then that would be unusable because it's already bent. So it would go into the scrap. And just grab the very end with your chain nose pliers. And you can use your fingers. It looks like I'm going to need 45. So once more I'll do 45, and if that's the correct length, then I can start bending my silver. So write these figures down as you go. So this one was 40. 35. It's just so you can go have a cup of tea and then come back and duplicate them. Okay, this one is 45 millimeters long, and I'm quite happy with that because we can always grab the end and make the spiral a little bit tighter so that it fits the shape. And this one is long enough that it actually fits. So make 2 of those, make them so that they're identical. And what we'll do is we'll make them opposite each other. So on this side, we'll put it that way. So you can see this one is 45. I wrote the numbers down so that you don't have to write it down. You can just look. So I've cut 2 pieces of wire, 45 millimeters long, and these are 0.8 diameter. Now, take your number 2 cut flat hand file and file the ends flat. And I'm just holding this in my fingers with about 1 millimeter to 2 millimeters sticking out so I don't bend the wire. I just want to make it so it doesn't have this ugly chopped off section on the end. And I'm using 0.8 because I want it to look a little more delicate. I don't want it to look so robust. So I'm just going to take this, grab the very end, make your spiral, and we know that we can make this one so that it points down. Now we're going to go opposite and make our big spiral. Try to make these curves smooth, and it looks like I'm going to have to anneal my wire. It's a little bit too hard because I'm not getting as smooth a curve as I'd like. So when you order your wire, order it either dead soft or half hard. This is hard because I pulled it through a draw plate. I started at 1.2 millimeters and pulled it down to 0.8, so I should have known better. And now I have my annealed wire. Much better. So just grab the very end and you can work it around with your fingers, manipulate the size of your scroll on the end. So a little tighter on this end. And a little bigger on that end. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Now I just need to duplicate it with the other one. So you can see I have my 2 that are pretty close to the same size. They don't have to be perfect, but close. Flatten them out so that when we lay them inside our ring shank, they'll be nice and flat so that when we solder them we won't have to go back later and try to readjust it. Probably parallel jaw pliers, and you can just give it a squeeze. They're handy for that type thing. And your fingers. Always use your fingers. Your best tools, and they're free.